The tractor in front of us broke its axle in two, just because it was carrying a bit too much weight. The axle couldn't handle the load and snapped in half. Fortunately, the repair team responded quickly and arrived on the scene soon after. Since the cargo was exceptionally heavy, the craftsmen first used a jack to support the trailer, allowing them to remove the rear wheel stuck underneath the tractor. After separating the damaged tire from the chassis, they used the tractor's powerful engine to pull the broken-down tractor off the road. This not only ensured safe repairs, but also allowed the road to reopen as soon as possible. Once the tractor was pulled to an open space nearby, the craftsmen noticed that the broken half-axle was still stuck inside the housing. Their next task was to remove the wheel hub casing and extract the planetary gears. Once the planetary gears were successfully removed, the broken splines could be taken out. On the other side, the flange had also broken and was tightly fixed to the wheel hub. To inspect the flange, the craftsmen needed to manually remove all the securing bolts. Once removed, they could clearly see the two sections of the broken half-axle. To reduce repair costs, the owner sent the broken half-axle to a nearby professional repair shop. After inspection, the shop's craftsmen determined that the issue wasn't too severe. They only needed to join the two sections of the half-axle using a cylindrical steel rod, restoring it to factory condition. After determining the repair method, the craftsman fixed the flange end to the lathe, then used a tailstock to apply pressure on the broken surface, realigning the two sections of the half-axle. Next, they measured the original dimensions of the half-axle to ensure the repaired part would have no deviation in size. After completing the measurements, the craftsman found that the fracture had some torn areas that needed to be machined smooth with a lathe tool. They also created a chamfer on the surface to increase the contact area during welding, improving the overall weld quality. Since this repair uses original steel rod joining, the craftsmen needed to drill a hole in the center of the axle. First, they drilled a pilot hole into the fracture and then used a twist drill bit to further enlarge the hole. After confirming the hole's accuracy, they used a reamer for more precise cutting. During this process, they regularly measured with a caliper to ensure the size met the requirements for joining. Once the hole was complete, to ensure the half-axle's strength during use, the craftsman threaded the inside of the hole. This design not only ensured concentricity, but also greatly increased the stability of the joint. After threading was complete, the flange end processing was finished. Next, the craftsman began working on the cylindrical steel rod for the joint. First, they machined the irregular surface of the rod, smoothed and measured the flange's bore diameter and depth with a caliper to ensure precise cutting. After marking the dimensions, they machined the rod, first removing the rusted surface and then carefully cutting according to the previous measurements. Since the flange had internal threads, the craftsman machined matching external threads on the rod so that the internal and external threads would fit perfectly. This prevented future breakage at the joint. With skilled operation, the craftsman quickly created the necessary threads on the steel rod. They then joined the two parts, and during the fitting process, everything moved smoothly, indicating the precision of the measurements. After the joint was made, the craftsman noticed a slight protrusion at the interface, so they used a lathe tool to smooth it out, ensuring the joint was flush. They also machined a groove at the joint to make the welding more secure. After completing the groove, they proceeded to the full welding process. To ensure weld quality, the craftsman paused after each layer to remove slag from the surface, preventing inclusions in the weld. After welding was finished, the steel rod was still not ready for joining, so the craftsman trimmed it down until the required dimensions were met. Once these steps were completed, they used an angle grinder to smooth the surface, ensuring the flange met the specifications. They then moved on to the other end of the half-axle. The craftsman smoothed the fracture and machined a welding chamfer to increase bonding strength during welding. Since the steel rod already had the joint prepared, they drilled a hole in the axle that matched the steel rod's outer diameter, cutting it to ensure precise alignment during joining. After machining was complete, they joined the two parts. Once the joint was made, the craftsmen secured the half axle to the lathe and tested its concentricity. After confirming everything was aligned, they began the welding process. During the welding, they removed slag after each layer, not only releasing tension, but also preventing impurities from getting trapped in the weld. Since the half axle needs to withstand a great deal of torque, the steel rod joint also underwent full welding to ensure its strength and durability. Once the welding was finished, to make the weld seam look clean and tidy, the craftsmen used a lathe tool to carefully smooth it out, ensuring the appearance was consistent with factory specifications. With that, the half-axle repair was complete, and the next step was assembly. This process was relatively simple, as it involved following the disassembly steps in reverse to avoid incorrect placement during reassembly. After installing the planetary gears, they used a hydraulic press to fit everything back into place. Once the bearings were installed, the axle was reassembled into the rear axle housing. To prevent potential oil leaks in the future, the craftsmen applied sealant to the end cover before reinstalling the brake system. They secured everything with bolts, ensuring nothing was loose. Finally, they reinstalled the tire, and the breakdown was fully repaired. What do you think of the craftsman's skills? If you had to rate them out of 10, how many points would you give?